The butler did it. The report explains a lot and gave a fairly understandable timeline of events. She keeps expecting the other shoe to drop in a galaxy of women, but the fact of the matter is that it effectively had the moment they exited cruel space. Miles Brent was the first major point of contact. He was a bit of a discipline problem that often ended up on janitor and latrine duties, but otherwise an unremarkable soldier by the extremely high standards of the Dauntless. Like most soldiers of the Dauntless, he could have easily slipped into special forces with his abilities. He had been the only person to be captured on the first pirate attack, an entire small fleet that had been put into position by numerous parties to try and grab the unusual ship coming out of cruel space. An encounter that had been just as surprising to the pirates as it was to the Dauntless. The mutual surprise had caused most of the pirates to hesitate, and only a fraction of their forces were launched in boarding torpedoes. These forces were then ripped apart by the heavily armed and incredibly antsy crew. Couple that with the fact that the Dauntless apparently appeared invulnerable with its comparably absurd amount of ablative armor, and most of the pirates had run before the Dauntless could even swing its guns around. Brent had then proceeded to escape custody with impromptu psychological warfare and had managed to get into the bowels of the ship, where he proceeded to cause absolute havoc and trick the admittedly simple-minded communications officer into sending their location to the Dauntless under the premise of calling a friend. He had then facilitated the capture of the ship by electronic warfare, and the pirate captain had been offered a deal when dragged into custody. That's when the EFL had been born. A small armada bought due to a pack of cowards scattering. Of course, during this time, the Dauntless had not been still and had made contact proper with their underarmed and underarmored escorts. Apparently, the fact that they had showed up all had sent a shockwave through the system, and that's why the pirates had beaten the official forces there. Things grew more and more complicated as Admiral Cistern spread out his troops like seeds to see what would grow into something he could harvest the fruits from. It was a pragmatic move to take advantage of every possible opportunity in order to gain the maximum yield. Sir Philip places a pot of tea with a cup alongside a flask that she sniffs at, vodka to spike the drink. She pours herself a hot cup and spikes the last little bit with a splash of the vodka. She begins to speed read through the report and has a few of her personal illusions broken, but in a good way. A species that regularly produced warriors that was considered legally suicide to attack. They had been charmed to the point that they were willingly mixing human cultures with parts of their own. Laws had been bent to accommodate human interests. Black ops strikes against criminal organizations, infiltration of numerous conspiracies, and so very much more. There had been losses, setbacks, and fatalities, but compared to such actions on Earth, things had gone oddly smooth. She placed it on the fact that the galaxy preferred to treat men with a gentler touch, much like how on Earth people would often give women the benefit of the doubt. No doubt the idea had amused Philip somewhat. The Cretan, multiple recruiting offices, people being placed in protection while also being studied, experimental warships, weapon testing, truly ludicrous amounts of wealth being pushed around. No wonder everyone's being so cautious. Getting even a fraction of this to Earth would crash the economy through the floor. A semi-formal branch of research had opened up, taking wild and varied looks at the axiom energy that's behind all the shenanigans in the galaxy, and unusual results just kept pouring out. Aside from some few strict rules, the list seemed to compose of only a single word. Yes, that's not even touching the galaxy's reaction. The guards at the doors have apparently been making sport of literally throwing out invisible women from a race called the Cloaken, a species geared towards stealth and infiltration to such a degree that they had gotten lazy and every idiot thought they were some master spy regardless of actual ability. If she could get her hands on just 2 girls with those natural abilities and shake the stupid out of them, then she'd have the start of something amazing. Of course, That would require her to actually understand more about the cloaken species and know how to get under their skin both literally and metaphorically. She would have to expand her skill set to somehow dealing with insects, reptiles, fish, birds, and all forms of unusual life out there, including beings made of pure energy, and some that seem to be nothing more than protoplasmic slime vaguely shaped like a woman. Although she had to admit the self-decapitating plant monsters were indeed throwing her off balance. Not that they were the only plant monsters running around, but they were one of the stranger ones. She needed to not only study as many races as feasibly possible, but actually meet them and understand how they tick. What might be a sign that a human is lying could very well be an indication of an uncomfortable truth in a trait, or be the evidence that they're sick in another race. No matter how much I have, it's not enough. She notes to herself as she takes a gulp of her tea to find it lukewarm and barely half a mouthful. A glance at a nearby digital readout and she notes that no less than 3 hours have passed. A glance to the corner of the room to see one of the agents that had been sent by China sneaking through extra files. She has to resist rolling her eyes at the almost comedically bad attempt at subterfuge. That's what you get when your agents are the ones that flattered you and not the absolute best. More than one mission had gone completely to shit because some idiot with no business in the service had flattered and flirted their way into a position of power. She had too many scars due to the incompetence of useless flatterers and bribe-happy fools to have any faith in the unproven and unscarred. Unfortunately, there were a fair number of such in her crew, a crew she was happy to foist onto Philip and make him do the work of actually getting some experience on them. A short and slight figure takes the teapot, cup, and flask away on a tray, and she pauses before turning to regard the person more thoroughly. It's human, and he's in an undaunted uniform, but he's swimming in it. "Name and rank?" she queries. "Private Stream, sir, ma'am." The salute she gets from him is snappy to the point it throws him off balance somewhat, and he struggles to not drop anything. If she was anyone else with any other kind of life experience, she would have called it adorable. Yes, big show aside, who are you? Really?" she asks, and he nods before leaning close. "Agent Jameson, infiltration, sabotage, and espionage." Private Stream's whisper is low and barely crosses the distance between them. "I see. And is there any reason why you in particular were sent?" she asks, a bit more openly. "To help you acclimatize, sir, ma'am. Is there any place in particular you want to go or something you want to do?" "Yes. Once you've finished with those, return here and we'll be off for a bit of a walk. It's important for an old woman to keep moving." "I wouldn't know about that, sir, ma'am. I've never been either such things." "Don't you sass me, boy. Get those things to the cleaner and then show me about." "Yes, sir, ma'am," he says before scampering off. "I know you're behind me. What game are you up to now?" Madame Stepanova asks, and there's a slight huff of amusement. "No game, just one of my personal agents in disguise to show you around. Herbert is the name you need when you want a gun, bug, or bomb somewhere unexpected in a hurry." Sir Philip answers, and she can't keep the grin off her face. Yes, the little snot will answer to Philip a great deal. But that's as useful as it is annoying, same side or not. "And if I need a turncoat in an organization?" she asks, noting a rather glaring hole in the boy's supposed skill set, a set she'll have to put to the test to see just how good he is soon. "Harriet will do," Philip answers. "I look forward to seeing the form your own personal projects take." Do you now? Regardless of our personal history and disagreements, we are, at least in theory, on the same side. And despite all of it, I do believe that we've both gained an appreciation for competence at the very least. She doesn't answer as the young man rushes back with all speed. There is a hidden efficiency in his movements, or rather lack of them in his arms, a technique to keep one's energy up when running long distances. It looks like a nervous quirk, but she can spot many things. The deliberately oversized coat and boots move ever so slightly off to indicate that they're somewhat heavier than they look. It's likely armored if not weighted down by weapons and equipment. Furthermore, the way the coat he's wearing is folded in the front, he could easily be hiding a bandolier of grenades, and you'd have to run him through a metal detector to check without removing the coat. In spite of herself, she approves. Her inspection of the local terrain will look like a dutiful young boy humoring his elderly grandmother, completely beneath suspicion. "Ready to go, sir. Ma'am, what name are you using today?" Private Stream asks, and she considers. "Lilia Strom." She replies and can sense the flinch that Philip cannot suppress. She looks back at him with a smile. "For old time's sake." "Just as cruel as ever, my dear." "Very well, I'll bring Brian Strom out of the drawers. Private Stream, get something casual on and become shy little Jacob Strom, our grandson." Oh, yes, sir," Herbert remarks, glancing from one to the other and then nodding. "I'll be back momentarily." An hour later, and an elderly couple are followed by their grandchild out of a local taxi. The older Tret man has a visor on to help with his poor vision even as he looks around. There are the wooden beads of the continuity hanging off his shoulder, a symbol of those who believe that to extend one's life is to lessen it. We have a single continuity. To widen it is to strip it of value. Beside him is an old woman who also has decorative beads hanging from a strap on her shoulder as she tilts up her large hat to get a good look around. Then she freezes as a passing Aromenta slips her a data chip. Mrs. Strom takes out the tiny piece of triangular technology and surreptitiously glares at it under her hat. "Oh, that's what happened to my data chip." "Thanks, Grandma," Jacob Strom says, taking it from her. "Nothing to worry about, my dear. Just the locals being friendly," Mr. Strom says kindly before leading her along. They make a slow walk around an entire length of a spire, a process that takes over an hour despite the fact that both of the elderly couple move at a clip that Jacob needs to jog to keep up with. "Jacob, dear boy, you've been here longer than your granny has. Are all the spires of Centris like this?" "More or less. The spires average out to either a little bigger or a little smaller than what you'll actually find." "This one is smaller than the average," Jacob replies, and Mrs. Strom considers things. At the lead of Mr. Strom, they start heading inwardly on the spire and they take a shortcut down an alleyway. "Hey," a voice says, and the couple and grandchild turn to regard a well-muscled Tret woman with a series of tattoos going down her right arm and leg. If she had a neon sign over her head that said gang member, then it would be less obvious. "Don't you know it's dangerous to go down alleyways on Okara Spire? Don't you know it's rude to point plasma pistols at people?" Mr. Strom asks as the gangster Tret walks up to them, then promptly screams as the top of Mrs. Strom's cane flicks out and the blade impales her hand and causes her to drop the weapon. It doesn't even hit the ground before being swept up and held against her head by Jacob. "Don't you know that dumb criminals always lose?" he asks, before suddenly twisting the axiom to cause her to pass out. "Well, I see there's plenty to keep me entertained if nothing else," Mrs. Strom notes casually.